We learned a key thing really early on was that when we asked parents if they wanted to try this cool new toy we created, they weren't interested. But when we told them that we had built it to help them with their emotional health, to help them learn how to deal with emotional regulation and how to build stronger relationships, all of a sudden parents were really interested in that.
I'm Brandon Reed, and you're listening to Ready, Set, Startup, a podcast that brings you industry-tested perspectives from leaders working in all areas of the startup lifecycle, so you can learn from the wisdom that they've gained over years in their fields of expertise and apply it in your own entrepreneurial journeys. Let's get into it. On today's show, I'm talking with Peter Fitzpatrick, co-founder and CEO of Fawn Friends. AI is going to change everything. I mean, how many times have you heard that? And of course, it's true. AI is opening doors that were previously either shut or entirely unable to be imagined. For most people, the AI revolution will begin and end with them interacting with the tools that people build with this new technology. But for Peter and his co-founder, they wanted to be a part of what was happening. They wanted to use AI to make a genuine impact in the world. And the clearest way that they thought to do that? Build the world's first AI that can form and foster true friendship. And if you're going to build that, who better to do it for than kids? That's the mission of their company, Fawn Friends. To offer, as he puts it, 1 billion people the opportunity to build sincere AI friendships. It's an incredibly ambitious goal coming from two co-founders with a really powerful story. Peter does a wonderful job focusing on and bringing attention to the need for emotional intelligence and awareness as a key factor in his ability to succeed as an entrepreneur. It's an area too often neglected in the startup world. I think you'll find our conversation engaging and ultimately really helpful. Up first, we discuss Peter's earliest entrepreneurial experiences throwing pool parties for his middle school classmates.
I just kept building businesses. So when I was in elementary school, I printed out stickers, the skateboard stickers, totally copyright infringement, and would print them and take them to school to sell them. It wasn't a terribly successful business, but it was one. And then in grade 7 or grade 8, I would host pool parties. So like a grade 7 class could hire me, and I would hire the lifeguard and organize the food and then make money that way. And I just kept doing that.
Awesome.
And then the second piece to it is my dad's a lawyer, and he works with sort of businesses between, let's say, 5 million in revenue and like 500 million. It's a pretty big range. But and so he used to just come home and tell stories about the people he worked with over and over again. Plus, he's an entrepreneur himself. He has his own firm. And so I think I've been studying what makes a business exceptional. He's a bankruptcy lawyer, so I've also what makes a business the opposite of that since I was a child.
Yeah, that's really neat. And not only exposure, like you said, to the side of what works, but the side of what doesn't. And then that you even had, I mean, you can be surrounded by that, but not have the bug yourself. But it sounds like you did from early, and that's neat. Let's talk a little bit about the company you're running now, Fawn Friends, and let's talk about kind of the building of that, the creation of that. Did you start that by yourself or with a co-founder, and what made your decision to do one or the other?
I founded it with a co-founder.
Okay.
I don't think it ever occurred to me not to do it, not to build a company with someone else. I don't know. My intuition just takes me to that. I think doing it alone would be very hard, and of course people do it. But not having someone who's in it with you, it's just like not an experience I wish to have. Plus, I don't have all the skills I need.
Yeah, sure. You can see your gaps. Is this the first company that you went all in on, Fawn Friends?
Yeah, it's the first company I went all in on.
And so you knew just intuitively to take that on with a co-founder. That's interesting because you hear over and over, yes, people do it alone, but by far the suggestion is to do it with others. And it sounds like you felt that in your gut, and definitely saw where you didn't have the skills you needed to take the business forward, which is also intuitive, and that's a lot of foresight. When you went all in and you decided to really go for this business and do it full time, the experience of that, was it as you expected it to be? I mean, what were you doing before? Were you working in corporate America, and was this transition as you thought it would be, or what surprised you about that transition?
I was building a technology company called Thinkific. I was on the executive team. I built the fastest growing division of the company. It was a payments company, or my division I was building was a payments product within a larger SaaS business. And did it, I think the biggest difference, or the thing that surprised me the most, was when all of a sudden there wasn't someone else to decide whether the thing I was going to do was okay or not okay, or right or not right. I'd always taken initiative to create a plan, go decide to do the thing, but there'd always been someone else who could say, do that or don't do that. And someone else who was always ultimately responsible. And I think what was new was when I started having to be like, oh, there's nobody to say it now. Like there's nobody to make that decision now except me. And to learn to like live in that, I don't know if ambiguity is the right word, but that lack of structure, the lack of clarity, the lack of the ability to say like, well, it's what they think we should do, so we're going to go that way, whether I agree or don't agree, right? Yeah, the like unsureness that comes with this role. And the other thing that's so interesting about it is then you start talking to investors and it gets like even wilder because they all tell you with so much confidence different advice. It's like talking to LLMs. They just like
so much confidence.
They just hallucinate at you with like 100% confidence that what they're saying is correct. And of course, hallucination is a joke, but that's a really interesting thing too, because you've got to like filter through what everybody says. All these really smart people have ideas about what's right and what's wrong, and try to seek and figure out what is true. And that's both a super fun experience, but like you're just living in a bunch of uncertainties. It's hard.
Yeah, for sure. No, that is, I think something that takes a lot of founders by surprise is even though you know the buck's going to stop with you, once it finally does, it's a stark contrast to working in a company in any capacity. When you, at what point did you decide to go all in on this business? You're building this other company. I think you called it Thinkific, and you're building that division of the company, and that's, you're within that structure. You decide to go all in and build Fawn Friends. You probably had a million other ideas before that you toyed with, that you were side hustling with. Why this one? Why at that moment when you did it? What caused that? Like, what was the catalyst for that decision?
There were two things. The first is that I'll tell a little bit of a backstory. When I was 7, my parents separated. They got divorced. It was a really challenging separation. Couldn't be in the same room until, I don't know, I was well into adulthood. And I didn't recognize until I was about 28 the patterns and beliefs that I took on through that period, and what I like came to understand as true living in that environment. And they're both wonderful people doing their very best, but were overloaded and sort of didn't know how to care for us in the middle of their conflict. And when right around the time GPT-3 or 3.5 came out, I was towards the end of like an 8-year journey of like bringing awareness to those patterns and beliefs and unwinding them. And also towards the end of a long relationship. And the idea that, and then this idea that maybe I was seeing a demo of GPT-3 or 3.5. It wasn't very good, but I was like, maybe it'd be good enough to make a toy. Like maybe we could find a customer that is simple enough or that has expectations that are low enough that this would be good enough for them. And so that idea came up. I shared the idea with my co-founder, who was also the one person I was in a relationship with. It was just about to end. And I was like, maybe we could create toys with this thing. And she said something like, oh, if you did that, maybe those toys could help kids process their emotions. So she was working at Lego, writing cartoons that help kids with social emotional skills. When she said that, I was like, boom, I needed that. Like my parents struggled sometimes, but they definitely would have given me something like that for Christmas if I asked for it. And so the combination of like opportunity cost of not building with AI as it was exploding, and then this deep understanding that if I had had the thing that we could build, my life would have gone a different direction. Maybe I would have experienced far less pain. That's what caused me to choose.
That's really great, and I love how you said the two things of it. You felt a really keen sense of opportunity cost for not capitalizing on AI as it was happening, and you saw the opportunity of that. But then also your circumstances of a personal applicability of like, man, I really would have benefited from that. The person that is around you that also has this kind of lens of a child and saying, hey, that could work, and children could really use that. I love that. Let's talk a little bit more about actually funding as you first got started. So you see the opportunity, you have your co-founder, you guys are both interested in doing this, you decide to go all in. How did you fund it? Where'd you get the capital?
Well, we started with no capital, and it was like, how much progress can we make out any money? And we didn't have any engineers either. And so we entered hackathons to see if we could recruit people to help us figure out if this was possible. And then the company was pretty much born at TED AI. So in San Francisco, TED has an event centered around AI, and they threw a hackathon. They've done it 2 years in a row now. And we recruited these engineers, and it was kind of a cool story because we were driving from Vancouver, or Whistler actually, where we lived, to San Francisco. And I was like, Robin was driving the car, and I was on my computer looking up hackathons to try to get into so we could try to find engineers. And at the last minute, you can probably hear my dog for those of you listening. Sorry, she's a little bit whiny at the moment.
No problem.
And for those of, and so and we had no engineers until like literally minutes before the deadline for the event. And then all of a sudden, through friends of friends, we had a PhD from MIT's Media Lab, and one of his coworkers joined us. These 2 artistic, amazing engineers. We entered the event, and then long story short, we won, ended up on stage, came in 3rd place. And that evening, a scout for Andreessen Horowitz came up and was like, "Are you going to do this for real? Because if so, I'll invest." And it was a small check, but it made it real in this way that it hadn't been before that. And that just got us going.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's a huge moment of validation to know that someone who does this for a living, offers professional money, is willing to offer you money. And I bet that, definitely made it tangible in a lot of ways. So from there, you bootstrapped at the beginning, you figured out how to do it. And then from there, you have gone the route of VC funding. Is that what you've done?
Yeah, that's right.
Let's talk a little bit about continuing to build the company. You found it, you got your idea. How are you establishing at this point a relationship with your customers? How are you finding them? How are you getting in front of them and establishing that product market fit?
We learned a key thing really early on, which was that when we asked parents if they wanted their youth to try this cool new toy we created, they weren't interested. But when we told them that we had built it to help them with their emotional health, to help them learn how to deal with emotional regulation and how to build stronger relationships, all of a sudden parents were really interested in that.
When you started with the why, interesting.
Well, the whole business is starting with the why, right? We wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't because it would make the world a better place.
Well, cool. So let's talk about you're continuing to build it. You have some money, and you're building this thing for real, trying to establish your product market fit, talking to customers, understanding how they resonate with the product. And at some point in here, you talked a little bit about how you took institutional you talked a little bit about how you had at the beginning bootstrapped this, and then you were going down to San Francisco trying to figure out a way to find people. And that was early. That was who can provide, what engineers can offer what at the very beginning. But what about bringing on actual people onto payroll? When did that happen? How did you know that was how did you know it was the right time to do that?
Well, there's 2 stories of that. So our first hire was an art director, which is a bit of a funny role for a technology company, but our character, or our business is steeped in character. Nice. This is Fawn.
Awesome.
And the very first person we brought on was the one that helped us create the way she looked.
Okay.
And then, and that was a friend of Robin's, my co-founder, someone that they wrote a film. Robin wrote it, and this person art directed the film that qualified for the Oscars in 23. And then we needed someone to build the software. And so we went looking for that person. And we've done that twice now. We had a co-founder who's decided actually to leave the business. And then we've had a new engineer start who's just fabulous. One I found through friends, and the other I found on Reddit, which is a bit funny. Our latest one found on Reddit.
Okay, cool. So let's also talk about kind of how, as you're starting this company and bringing people in, you have money, this thing's real. How are you differentiating yourself from, I mean, I'm going to use the term industry incumbents, but like what, this sounds very unique. Sounds like something that other people aren't doing. So how are you differentiating yourself from things that maybe people assume that you are like? And then how are you communicating that this is something wholly new?
Well, communicating about the wholly new thing's a challenge. I'll leave that aside for a second.
Mm.
I mean, it really does come back to like why we're doing this. And so I find it's not that when communicating with somebody about the fact that we're creating a robot that can build true friendships and that robot's going to help their human be more emotionally regulated and build secure relationships. It's not that hard. People seem to get that quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of a social robot, people have wanted social robots or artificial friends since like the beginning of time almost. There's stories going all the way back to the Greeks. So that part's not so hard. I don't spend very much time thinking about incumbents. People ask all the time. I mean, everyone's got their own either story from science fiction or there's some other product out there that's somehow in the same sphere. But really, we're just like dead focused on creating something, a being that's worth spending time with every day.
As you do that, how are you trying to build in, quote unquote, a moat? Like, how are you making yourself defensible from competition? Not only as you get started, I mean, I could see that. I hear that often from founders of people saying, yes, people ask about our competitors, but we are just dead set on building the best thing we can build and build a company worth existing in the world. But as you do that, how are you ensuring that this is a defensible product and defensible company that lasts in the marketplace?
So for us, it's all about the characters we express in the world they come from, and that having rich depth. There's two parts to that. The first part is the character itself. So it's not easy to design or create a character that's charismatic and attractive in a world that has conflict in it and that is engaging. And then the second piece is the technology that we apply to express the characters in the world, which also is a really challenging thing to get right.
What's one big bet as you are building your business, establishing this unique offering in the marketplace? What's a big bet that you have taken in order to grow your company in the early stages? And what gave you the confidence to take that risk? Did it pay off? What'd you learn?
I'm laughing because I'm like, well, pretty much the whole company is a big bet.
Yeah.
I think the bet is that it's possible to create something that's not human, that's worth talking to every day. And it's one of those businesses where when we figure it out, there's like no doubt that it's wildly valuable.
I'm curious to know how, so this is, like you said, everybody has a story from science fiction. Everybody's thought before about like, oh, is this, everybody has a story about this sentient being that you can interact with that is an AI or non-human. And so it's been something that humans have desired for a long time, like you said, and I didn't know this, but you can trace it back to the Greeks, I'm sure, in some early way. How do I ask this question? What gives you the confidence to know, hey, we can do that? Like, it's been tried a lot of times. We're just here at the beginning of the technology that can actually allow us to do it, granted, for sure. But there's got to be a lot bigger and better funded companies that have tried this. Why are you like, hey, we can do that. We can do that the right way?
Would this make a difference to the people that use it? Can we create something beautiful and worthwhile that we can scale? These are the kinds of questions I'm asking.
Right.
Can I do it? I have no idea. I don't know if I can get up tomorrow morning. There's no better way for me and our team to spend our money and our time than the way we are now. Of course, I'm sure I'm wrong with like little aberrations, but the orientation is correct.
My question kind of stems from, how are you communicating that to people who would be asking that question, right? You've raised professional money. A very common question from investors is, okay, so why you? And like, how do you answer that question? How do you say, here's why we can do this. Here's why we are uniquely positioned to actually pull this off.
So Robin, my co-founder, is a screenwriter. She was at Lego. She has spent every night for the last 4.5 years reading Harry Potter's books front to back. The character she lives, breathes, loves.
That's awesome.
Watches an inordinate amount of television. I don't know if she'd appreciate me sharing that, but she loves story and character deeply.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue it saved her life. Like it's so important to her.
Mm-hmm.
And then I deeply love creating things that both improve the world, like help people individually, and are proportionately and fairly, but also exceptionally profitable. And I'm willing to organize myself and others to pursue things that most people think impossible. And so then the question is, do you wish to bet on that? Yes. In fact, a lot of people look at me and say, stop shooting so big. Like, your ideas are crazy.
I think that's a really good way to say it, is a lot of people, even if they don't see a total and clear-cut path to how it is successful, they can see that the pursuit of it is worth it, that it matters, that the end goal of this, if you pull this off, that it matters to the world. And so they're willing to take a bet on that ultimately. And I think that's a neat way to think about it as the one building the company too.
Well, I think too, it makes sense to think through where the money is coming from and what the orientation of that person or organization is.
Sure.
So in venture capital, the orientation is, what if this goes right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so in this case, if this goes right, like, we're seeking just to serve 1 billion people. And I think that's possible. I think everyone in the world, if it was good enough, would have an artificial friend. Many, even.
Yeah, for sure.
If you're trying to get money from a bank or a private equity investor, or they may have a very different orientation. And so, like, it really matters to align what you're seeking to create, what you want for yourself and for the world, with where the money's coming from.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk also about scaling, as we've talked a little bit about how you founded the company, how you started it, how you are establishing yourself in the marketplace. You've raised your money, but scaling, and you mentioned the word earlier about, like, how do we achieve this at scale? It's a whole different question, a whole different point. What are a few different kind of pivotal moments throughout the company's journey so far that took this path to the next level, that allowed you to kind of grow exponentially and position yourself to grow to the next step? How'd you position yourself to encounter those opportunities and especially ensure you were ready for the growth that resulted from those things?
I'm not well suited to answer this question because we're still very much in the R&D phase. Like, we're very much, I wouldn't say we have not scaled yet. Yeah, so I'm probably just not, for right now, we're just solely focused on creating something that's worth spending time with every day.
Yeah.
Which is like a prerequisite for scale. And then once we have figured that out, then we'll worry about scaling.
Yeah, and I think that is a little bit more, I should have positioned the question more like that, is how are you getting ready for scale? What are the opportunities that you are trying to map out and put yourself in position to encounter that will help you scale? And I think what I continue to hear you go back to is, like, just build something that matters, build something that works, build something worth pursuing, and that will scale as you accomplish that.
Probably true that of every product, like companies that are in the top 10 largest businesses in the world, every single one of them, their products are used every day. What I'm trying to say is, it must be used every day to get to scale. But if you scale before it's used every day, it's kind of useless. So does that help? I'm not communicating it that well, but it's a prerequisite. So the first step is, create something that's worth using every day. The second scaling then is the second thing.
That makes total sense. Are you, right now, are you guys fully funded? Are you entering into another funding round to try to grow past what you are now, or do you have the money you need to build for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, we have the money we need to build for this foreseeable future. I expect we'll raise again in the future, but a lot of time and energy goes into fundraising. It's one of the things I learned through this journey so far. And you'll see the advice sometimes to only be fundraising when you're fundraising. I think that comes out of YCE, and I would encourage that strongly. A couple times I've made the mistake being like, I'll entertain a few conversations, and it's
interesting.
It's a waste of time.
So let's shift a little bit to some kind of practical points that a lot of my audience are founders, and they're looking to do what you're doing now and looking to be where you are, and so some kind of practical advice that they can apply in their journeys. Specifically, let's talk as it relates to funding, because we're on that topic a little bit. What's one thing that you wish you better understood about funding before you started your funding journey? What would that thing be if there was one thing you could identify?
I'll give two because one's the kind of a
Okay.
cheat answer. The most important thing I would say is like find good coaches. I moved to San Francisco with this intuitive sense that like I need to go there because the people there know how to build companies that serve 1 billion people. Didn't really know what that meant. I didn't really know what skills I needed, but I just like knew the people were here. And then suddenly they start showing up. But it is interesting because there's a bunch of people that show up that have no idea what they're talking about and will tell you they do. And then there's some that absolutely know what they're talking about. And I would encourage founders that are going through this to try to find mentors that match the stage they're at. Discern. You got to figure out for yourself how you figure out if this person's for real or not. Which usually comes down to, have they done it before? And then when you do get blessed enough to find a great mentor, I have two specifically that help with our fundraise. Do whatever they say with all your energy. I mean, obviously, bring your own
Sure.
intellect to deciding whether you should do it or not. But like, I have two coaches that I basically just did. I took everything they said and threw tons of energy at executing. One of them helped me like organize the process and reach people I wouldn't have reached otherwise. And another one helped me craft the story I would tell.
Oh, nice.
And that combination of things, well, not the story I would tell, the story that is real about our company and
Right.
what we're building. And those two things together, I think we raised the whole thing in like, we had our first term sheet 2 weeks after we started the fundraise.
Oh, geez. Awesome. That's great. And so when you say ensure that you have a good coach, what does that even look like? Like, what are you just saying? Mentor in business who has also gone and raised professional capital, or are there like funding coaches out there that you sought out?
Well, this person's sought me out. You'll find that they're attracted to you because if what you're doing is authentic and ambitious, at least this has been my experience. And it's kind of amazing the way the universe works. But literally, through my co-founder Robin, got this text one day, and he was like, "You're probably wondering who." Robin said, "I shocked this person named Matt Delaney. He's wonderful. He's a really ambitious founder himself, and he's done so much for us." But I got this voice message from him being like, "You're probably wondering who this guy is that Robin wants you to meet." Like here, and he actually pitched me on coaching us, which is just crazy. We compensate him, but fairly, I think. He's earned every dollar. And he's just doing it to give back, I think. He coaches 2 companies at a time.
Okay, cool.
I'd be a bit wary
he's
of
like a
professional
startup
coaches,
coach.
I guess, but he's an entrepreneur himself that does it because it matters to him.
Yeah.
And I think that's, in my experience so far, better than like career. But maybe not. I'm sure there's really good career coaches too. It's just important to really be deliberate about who you decide to spend your time with.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Especially
there are
in
a lot of
early
people who will
phases.
say that they know what they're doing and they don't. And that can kill you if you go the wrong direction, right? So
Yeah,
not to
sure.
over dramatize it, but these people both unlock your future and can block it, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you're going about it with the approach that you're saying of like, hey, find the right person, excuse me, and go all in on what they're saying. I mean, with all of your energy, execute on the things that they're coaching you to do. And if you do that with the wrong person, that could be really detrimental and you could waste a lot of time. So yeah, that makes sense. And let's talk about kind of that moment. We touched on it earlier, but let's go back to the moment that you thought, all right, it's time to hire and bring someone on who you said kind of the first person was the creative mind who decided what Fawn was going to look like. This is a moment that a lot of founders hit, and I hear my listeners struggling with, that there's a moment of, all right, we've got some traction, and now like we need to bring more people on. We can't just do this on our own. How did you know? What better question is, what advice do you have for people who are also hitting that moment in time of like, okay, we have some traction, this is a real thing, we need to bring other people into this? What advice would you have for people who are at that moment and maybe anxious or hesitant to take that step?
Well, one thing I was going to say is delay as much as possible. Um, there's a huge cost to bringing
Yeah.
on new people, both in
Hmm.
like, of course, there's the money, but also you all of a sudden aren't learning
Hmm.
whatever they're doing.
Totally.
You've got to coordinate across more people. And I think with AI, you can get away with far more than you could before.
Hmm.
That said, you can also do it. You can also delay for too long.
Hmm.
I think the number one tip is look for people who've done what you need them to do before. And you can figure that out by asking very deep lines of questions. There's a great, Thinkific taught me this. It's called top grading. Top grading is a specific form of interviewing that essentially figures out what's true by asking detailed questions.
Hmm.
Increasingly detailed questions, like get to the point where if they say they did something in a meeting, you're like, what did you say to them in that moment? It's very, very detailed. And you can tell if someone's lying because they will trip up. Or lying's not quite the right word, but everyone presents themselves in whatever light.
Hmm.
And there's huge cost for you to see them in the wrong light.
No, there's a huge cost, both in, I really like the way you said it, that obviously in money, but also in you not learning what they now know. That's a big one. And then that cooperation and that there's just a lot of people are complicated. People are hard. Even the best people fit in the right roles, fitting exactly with your culture, people are hard. And delaying that as long as possible. I think there's a lot of benefit to that, but it's also, like you said, a fine line of not waiting too long. As you operate your company now, Peter, even as you said, kind of in these early stages, what's a gospel truth that you find yourself consistently going back to as you run your business, like a principle that you live by that continues to prove itself out as truth over and over?
It's funny that you ended that with truth. The statement is put truth first.
Hmm.
It has multiple meanings to me. The first meaning, and this is like not talked about very much in the startup world, truth. Some people like truth can be a word to describe God or the universe or consciousness, like what is true. And this is not in the religious sense, more in like a spiritual sense. But there's this counterintuitive thing I found, which is that if I recognize that my relationship with truth, with consciousness, comes first, then whatever happens at work doesn't matter actually very much. I think one of the things when you asked earlier about what did I not get, or what was surprising when I became CEO, is like the
Hmm.
emotional ups and downs of what happens. I think is harder than anything else. Like coding is never going to be as difficult as dealing with the rejection from an investor, or the uncertainty about the future, or someone you really wanted to hire saying no. But the closer I am with truth, the less that stuff matters.
Hmm.
And so that's not, yeah, people don't talk about that very much, but I think it's really powerful.
Hmm.
And then on the second level, there's a lot of leaders I've worked with where their ego is more important than what's true. But I wish to find out what's true, because that's
Yeah.
the only path to serving 1 billion people is through what's true.
That's a really good answer. Let's talk about failing, which is a really big part of startups in any industry with any kind of product. What's a failure that still stings, and what did you ultimately learn from it?
I really do my best to not even think about this stuff. And so I don't have a good answer to that question. And it's because I actively like purge it from myself.
I mean, how are you ultimately learning from the things that go poorly?
I think that so if you ask a question like what stings, there's an emotional attachment that is causing the thing to sting. And it's not like I don't feel them. Like I published something the other day, sent to one of our investors. He sent me a note back being like, this kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And I need that information because I didn't see that it sucked before I sent it to him. That's stung.
Mm-hmm.
But immediately I'm like, okay, but what I want to know is that sucks. Like forget the sting. That's not useful. And so there's sort of like two parts to every failure. And the sting is useless. I don't need it. But there's still like the intellectual truth. He's probably right. He might be wrong though. Our customers are different than him. And so I seek to collect information about what's true, but not emotional attachment to it.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. I can see the two things and how they're different for sure. Let's move into a couple closing questions. So when you speak about speak with other entrepreneurs, what's a question that you get asked the most? And then the second part to that is, what's a question that they're not asking but should be?
It's funny. The question that I get asked the most is how much have you raised, which is ridiculous,
Okay.
but it's true in this community anyway. But the question that I don't get asked, I've only been asked this once. A man named Greg Gunn. He's almost a legend in the software community in Vancouver. But he's building a business called Maple now, and I was on the phone with him, and he asked me this beautiful question, which is, what do most people get wrong about what you're creating? But what do most people get wrong about your business? Which I loved, because all of a sudden I was like, oh, shoot, that's what I'm not communicating well enough. It's a perfect question.
Yeah, I love that question. And I think that I think it gets right at the things that you need to be thinking about and that you need to then further define, because it's funny, if somebody, just the other day, someone was saying, so what do you do? And my wife was with me, and I said, Katie, you answer that question. I want to hear how you'd answer it, and kind of hear her thoughts on if she understands the business. That was more of a joke, but it would be an interesting exercise to ask someone who's just intimately connected to you, who knows what you do. You've explained 4 or 5 times what you do to them. Can they also reiterate it? Same idea of and if they can't, and where they can't, or the areas that you need to further articulate it, probably in your marketing and to your customers. And so, yeah, that makes sense. Imagine, Peter, that you woke up at the start of your career, somehow able to retain all the knowledge and experience that you have now, but you're right at the beginning. I mean, how do you spend that first week of your fresh start?
On bringing awareness to the things that move my emotions up and down. I don't think we talk nearly enough about how important emotional regulation is to this journey.
To the entrepreneurial journey in particular?
Well, I mean, life in general. I mean, our intimate relationships too will go up and down like crazy.
And so paying more attention to that and understanding when you're up, when you're down, and how that matters.
It's kind of, at least my journey has gone through, the first step is oh, I have emotions. And then the second step is, which of course I knew that they were there, but there's an awareness to bring to them. And then the second step is what causes them now and way from our past. And then I've learned that there's a third step, which is oh, I don't really need these emotions, which a lot of people would say is wrong or crazy. You should feel everything, and you should, but there's this it's possible to indulge in them too. And I found it's pretty powerful to just not get upset when something negative happens. Is it negative? Who knows? We can't even tell what the future looks like. If I could go back, I mean, I wouldn't take anything back, but if I was forced to, and somebody said, what would you do in your first week? I would start bringing awareness. I would start increasing my self-awareness.
Okay, so lastly, I got one more for you. What's one tool or quote or book that you have found indispensable to your progress, either personally or professionally?
This is super obscure, but I'm going to share it anyway because it touches on the tones we've been talking about this whole time along. But there's this man named Vernon Howard that I consider a coach who died a long time ago. And he held these classes in, I think, somewhere in Colorado and somewhere at one point in California earlier. And he talks a lot about, he's helped me a lot, get to this place where I can forge into the unknown without the insecurities that I used to be plagued with. And I don't think I'd be surprised if anyone else who's on this show brings him up. So now's a good time to do it, probably.
Nice. Vernon Howard. Okay. Yeah. And I'll put it in the show notes. People can look into him. Awesome. Well, Peter, this was super valuable. I think there was a lot here that was really unique. I love how you dive into the emotional and personal side of things. It's a part of entrepreneurship in the startup world that doesn't often get talked about, but we're all human beings, and that matters. And so I loved how you talked about that. I think that's worth focusing on and bringing up. And I love what you guys are doing. I mean, this is really, really cool. I'm excited to see what you do with Fawn and what you do with this company, Fawn Friends, and see where it goes from here. This was really great. I appreciate your time. you guys enjoyed the show, leaving a review is the best way to help others find it. Second only to sharing it directly with your friends and family. Thanks so much for helping get the word out. Hit me up at brandon@readysetstartuppod.com if you have additional questions about a topic I covered, have suggestions about another area you'd like to see me dig into, or just want to say hi. Please reach out. I'd love to get in touch. Keep imagining, keep creating, keep inspiring your spheres of influence with what you're passionate about. The world may just need that dream that's in your head. See you next time.